Everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 6 of Wotakoi Love is Hard for an Otaku. And I felt like an otaku today, so I wanted to wear my vast shirt from Trigun, as one does. But yeah, so we're on episode 6, and the last several episodes, I would say episodes 3, 4, and 5 have just been amazing across the board. Episodes 1 and 2 were good, but episode 3 was when I was like, oh, I really like this series. And the last several episodes, especially last week when we got to meet Hirotaka's brother, just sent me. I was loving it. So I'm excited to dive into this episode. When we are into this episode, we will officially be like over the halfway point because there's only 11 episodes in the actual series. Now there may be some OVAs later on that we'll get into, but for now I'm like, okay, good. We're getting into over the halfway point, so things are probably going to start to ramp up, right? We would think. So, in any case, I want to talk about S Anime's comment for episode 4 before we start diving in. They said, I agree that Hirotaka and Narumi are better as a couple since they're 80% vanilla and 20% spice, while Kabakura and Koyanagi are the exact opposite. I prefer couples that banter. However, if Koyanagi needs an honest response, then there's a time and a place where the banter needs to stop, in my opinion. However, you can make the argument that from Kabakura's perspective, Koyanagi is drunk, so he would take her emotional moment of being insecure a lot more seriously if she were sober, and maybe he would rather express how he truly feels when they're at home and when she's sober, but it would have been good to show it if that were the case. Yeah, I agree 100% with this. You can definitely tell with Kabakura, especially last episode with his character, that he's definitely more of a private person. He likes being more private and doing things behind closed doors. He doesn't like to publicly show affection. He doesn't like to publicly do that. And I respect that because I am not a big PDA person myself. So I absolutely get where Kabakura is coming from. I like when people are private with their affection. I think it makes it more intimate. It makes it more special. It doesn't feel as if, some couples are just out in the open, like making out. And you're like, do you feel insecure about your relationship? And that's why you have to do this in front of people to be like, yeah, we're dating. See, it kind of gives that vibe sometimes, especially when it's very over the top PDA. So I respect that from Kabakura. But like S Anime said, it would have been good to get a little, reflection of that from Kabakura himself, but I really grew to love his character last episode, so I'm not going to make any complaints. No, S Anime says, I think as well, it was mentioned that they're sports captains in high school. So from high school to now, they've probably interacted like this all the time. So it's hard to be honest in a normal situation unless they're in competitive mode in general for both of them. I like this episode a lot. Both couples have stuff to work on, but we love them each dearly. Yeah, I feel like because they're so competitive with one another, it adds to that even more. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. So thank you, S Anime. That was a great comment. I appreciate that. But yeah, those are my comments and what I've got. Before we start this episode, I want to give a very quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you, those on Patreon who support me. Y'all are amazing. I appreciate each and every one of you, and y'all have no idea how grateful I am. I am humbled by your support constantly. But I also want to give a shout out to the philanthropy tier because they donate a little extra each month to help support the channel, and you all are amazing for doing so. So thank you to Alex Cornejo, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, to Ichu, to Eric, to Fisho, to Ghostly Turnip, to El Freya, to Lyndon, to Murphew, to Willie Morris. I got some new ones on here. Translucent Men, Sunspots, Shimoyama, as well as Daniel James, Diana Williams, and Kier Susar. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yes. So I'm excited, y'all, to get into this episode because as you know, we're over the halfway hump. So that means things are probably going to start ramping up, and I'm excited for that. So we are going to start episode 6 of Wotakoi, Love is Hard for an Otaku. Thank you so much to Sunspots for getting me this video file so we don't have to deal with ads. Yay! And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This was a really cute episode. I loved it so much. I really like this episode quite a bit. We have a lot to talk about, so we might as well just dive in. But I really like, I I am all about in romances just like the little things, like couples, what they do, how they spend their time together, their dynamic. And I feel like this episode does a really good job of talking about something that's pretty relevant right now, which is the holiday season. And when you have festive things, and like, how do you spend your time during the holidays, and how do you do all that? So I feel like the timing of this episode was really good as to when I'm filming it, because a lot of people are going to be in the same boat coming up right now and in the next month. So that's really exciting to see this like all play out. The stars aligned, as it were. So we need to just go through this episode in chronological order, starting with the Kabadon between Hirotaka and Kabakura. I like Kabakura. I like when you first see him getting the Kabadon, he's like looking to the side like, oh God. It's like he knew this was going on. And of course, Kiyonagi and Narumi are just having such a field day with it. And he's like, whose idea was this? And Hirotaka's like, So we don't exactly know, like, if it was Hirotaka's idea and he was just proposing it, or if it was one of the girls' ideas and he's like, I'm sorry, I just went along with it because, you know, his face when he looks down, like, poor Hirotaka, he's like, I have failed you, bro. The calzones have betrayed us. Like, he's like, I have betrayed you, Kabakura. I'm so sorry. I also want to talk about the idea about dominance and male culture, because I think that Hirotaka is such a legend for taking the stance that he does. We're going to get past the OP and then go straight to it. We're going to talk about Hirotaka here in just a hot second after we get into this point about the umbrella. But I love Hirotaka so much and I admire him. But we have this situation with the rain. Let's just get this out of the way. Cold rain is one of the worst conditions to be involved in, right? Because, you know, it's like if it's summer and it's raining, sometimes when it rains in the summer, that's a relief. You're like, oh, it feels so good. It's so hot and humid outside. The rain just like helps to alleviate that. I live in a very humid environment, so sometimes in the middle of summer when it rains, you're just like, oh, thank God, finally. And then in the winter time, you know, you can bundle up and there's snow, but the snow doesn't really melt until you get inside. So while you're outside, the snow's just there, but it's not, as long as you're bundled up properly, it's not like permeating and getting you damp. It's just snow, right? And then there's summer and everything. But cold rain is this weird combination of you're soaked. It's not like snow where it just builds and builds and builds. It's soaking you. You are actively wet. But it's cold enough where it's not relieving at all. It's just disgusting. And you usually catch a cold or get sick because it's just completely dampened all around you. And it's one of the worst feelings. I would say cold rain is probably my least favorite condition to have to be out in. I really would say that. I'd say that. So I like that we start out with Hirotaka and Narumi both realizing that they've forgotten their umbrellas. And I like the idea that Hirotaka, you know, when Narumi's like, oh, I forgot my umbrella, you expect him to be like, well, I have one right here, but he forgot his too. So they're not so different, you know, both of them have their moments. And then Kabakura shows up and he's like, what are you buttheads doing? He's like, how did you forget this? I like that he tells them you've been an adult for years already. And then Kiyonagi says the same thing to him and he finds it very endearing because he's like, you and I are on the same wavelength. We're both the adults of adults. I love that. That's super sweet. But I like the fact that Kabakura's like, here, take the umbrella. Is like, and at first he's like, well, why don't you just, I like that he doesn't immediately give them the umbrella. He's like, why don't you just run to the nearest store? And Narumi and Hirotaka are very similar, even though they seem so opposite personality-wise. They have a lot in common, where she's like, oh no, my manga notes, they'll get ruined. And he's like, my games are going to get wet. So they both, even though their personalities are kind of night and day, they both have the same. It's interesting. If we talk about them as a couple versus Kiyonagi and Kabakura as a couple, Narumi and Hirotaka, they both value very similar things. They have very different personalities, where Narumi is very expressive and open with her emotions, and Hirotaka is very reserved and seems to have a wall put up, even though once you get to know him, not exactly the case. But they both value the same things. They both have the same kind of moral base to them. They both, you know, enjoy similar activities. So they're a lot more alike than they seem on the outside. Whereas Kabakura and Kiyonagi, they, you know, are both competitive. They both have similar personalities where they're very like outspoken, very competitive, very intense and mature, but on the inside they are very different. They're very different in how they express themselves. They're very different in their kind of like moral compasses. And I like how, but maybe not so much because they both had the idea of the maturity of having the umbrella. But I like how this series portrays two same age couples, but they have very different dynamics and showing how it can work between both of them just in different ways, right? They each have their own struggles, but it's in a different way, right? And so, of course, he gives Narumi the umbrella, you know. And she's, what about you? And he's like, oh, I'll just run away. And then him just humming. He's like, I gotta get that Evangelion, you know, Kuji today, which don't blame you, sir. But his little, like, hum and little singing when he runs away and trots in the rain was adorable. I love that. And then, okay. Hirotaka gets all the smooth points because he's, one, holding the umbrella for her, which is sweet. And you can see he has his game case in between her and him. But then whenever the truck goes by and like splashes water, he like switches ever so smoothly to the other side to do two things. Not only protect her from getting wet, which is very gentlemanly to do, but also to switch his games over so they don't get wet either. It's a 2-for-1, but you know what? It's super sweet, and I love it. And I love her little blush, like, okay, he did it so casually, and he did that so casually, too. She's like, wow, he switched both sides. He could have just stayed on the other side of her and swapped over the games to the other side of him so they didn't get wet, but he also cared about her, too. So Hirotaka is growing on me so much. He gets all the points. At first, I wasn't sure if I would date somebody like Hirotaka. I would. I definitely would, because he's just so sweet, and he's just so chill. But yeah, we need to talk about Koyanagi and how quickly her views about rainy days change. Because at first, I was like, oh, I feel you, girl. One, walking in flats or heels and getting them wet is so gross. Because usually when you wear flats or heels as a woman, or as someone that is presenting that wears those, you can be presenting as male and wear them too, whatever you floats your boat. But usually if you wear flats or heels, you don't wear socks with them. You wear either pantyhose or you wear tights or you wear like, you know, the slip-on, like sheer, like fake socks, or you just go barefoot inside your flats or heels, right? So if they get wet, your foot is just basically soaked and damp and it sucks. Like, as somebody that for work has done one of those scenarios, getting those types of shoes wet and just being stuck in them all day, not a fun time. Not a fun time at all. And so I get where she's like, I hate rainy days. So then Kabakura jumps under her umbrella. You can stand under my umbrella, Ella, Ella, A. And he's like, can I share your umbrella until we get to the store? And she's like, well, why didn't you bring yours? And Kabakura does not want to say, I like that he doesn't say I gave it to Narumi and Hirotaka. I think because one, he doesn't want her, again, Kabakura, as we talked about in the intro, he's a very private person. He doesn't like exposing himself. He still is kind of a little restrained by some masculine societal structures, but he doesn't want to expose himself. And he also doesn't want, you know, to make Koyanagi jealous that he gave it to Narumi, you know, and get that flared up from, you know, episode 4. So he's like, oh, I just forgot it. It's easier to say that than to go into the big spiel about it. And she's like, well, what if you get sick? You should have called me. She's like, here, hold the umbrella. And I love that she wipes the rain off him and she's like, you're such an idiot. You should be an adult and know already. And he smiles because that's exactly what he said to them. So to him, I like that Kabakura recognizes that she thinks the same way he does about the situation, which is sweet. She's like, well, I'm going to have dinner at your place today. And he's like, well, what do you want? And she's like, meat. Is that a double entendre? Did you want steak kebabs and another type of kebab, ma'am? Seems that way. And then he's like, well, why don't you stay overnight? So suggestive. And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to stop by my place first. Which, that opens up the whole myriad of doors. Like, did she stop by her place just to get pajamas to spend the night? Did she stop by her place to get other things she may need for later? And then she says, I love rainy days. Girl, I mean, if that was how my day transitioned, I'd probably be that way too. And he's like, I can go buy the Ichiban Kuji tomorrow. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. These spicy too. So the next day, what I love, Hirotaka became my hero in this episode. I love him for a number of reasons. One, because he immediately noticed something was wrong. Like, Hirotaka comes across as a character that doesn't seem to notice things. He comes across a character that's kind of aloof, but the reality is he notices quite a lot. He's just not an expressive person in letting it be known. But I like that because I think a lot of times when we see characters that are really chill or not very emotionally expressive on the outside, we think that they don't care or that they're just absent-minded. But the reality is that just may not be their deal. They just may not express it or feel the need to express it. And that's totally fine, right? And so when he said that at first, I was like, well, she looks like she's okay. I was kind of in the same boat as Kabakura and Koyanagi being like, well, she seems fine to me, but then Hirotaka's like, she's in stealth mode. She's trying not to let it be known. He's like, she was normal this morning. And she's like, look, don't these two seem really close? I love that she's just like, look at these two guys. Look at this potential yaoi couple, right? The usual Narumi. He's like, I feel like she's sad today. I love that it wasn't anything serious. I thought the joke was going to be that she was like on her period or something. And she's just like, my period started today. Like, which would have been reason enough to be upset, you know? But in fact, it was that her favorite character died in the anime she was watching. And then we find out that Kabakura is a manga reader and he's like, I should have known. Oh, man. So yeah, they're like, well, she looks like she's well. And Kabakura's like, well, are you imagining things? And Hirotaka's like, no, I'm not. She hasn't texted. She's like, nothing's wrong. Anytime somebody's like, oh, it's fine, nothing's wrong, with a smile, something is probably wrong. You should probably check into that. But I like that Hirotaka's like, well, I can't ask her anything. And whenever he said what she was saying in her voice, that was really cute. I love that. And so Kabakura's like, look, if she doesn't want to talk about it, then that's all you can do. Kabakura has a very hands-off approach. I like Kabakura and Hirotaka are very different in how they handle, like, knowing their partner is distressed. Kabakura, I honestly would probably initially be like Kabakura, where I would be like, well, you know, it's not my business. They'll come and talk about it when they're ready. But I can't say that because I've also had instances where I could tell that my friend was not feeling well and I was like, hey, is anything wrong? Like, you know, I kind of fluctuate between both of them, but I like that they both handle it differently. Kabakura is like, well, hey, if she doesn't want to talk about it, then that's all you can do and you just need to wait. Which I feel is him projecting on how if Koyanagi is feeling distressed, he's like, I'll just give her space and when she's ready to talk about it, we'll get to it. Kind of like the bar scene in episode 4. But I also like that Hirotaka's like, no, I want to do something about it now. Whenever she feels bad, that makes me feel uneasy, and I don't like that. So I like that for as aloof and like distanced as Hirotaka can seem, he actually is really observing and he wants to kind of get to the root of it because he wants her to be comfortable because it makes him feel comfortable. And I'm all about that. And Koyanagi tries to like kind of, she senses that and she's like, well, what you want to do something for her, don't you? And he's like, maybe that's it. And Kabakura is like, well, we're talking about you. What would you do? And she's like, well, in any case, when you're down, it's best to have fun and just forget about it. You know, do you know what Naru likes? And he's like, what does she like? And then he instantly like leans over and Kabakura's like, God damn it. She's like, and I like that Hirotaka's like, oh, like he's just all posed, all innocent next to Kabakura, which is hilarious to me. I love it. And she's like, good decision. And he's like, no, this isn't it. She's like, now I think about it, this isn't it. And he's like, what? I bet Naru would be into a dominant hero and a submissive Kaba pairing. But here's what I like, where I like that Kabakura's like, I don't want to be submissive. Or he's like, maybe he does and he's not comfortable with it. But Hirotaka's like, no thanks. I'm not comfortable enough to be the dominant one. And you know what? Hirotaka's a hero. He's a legend because I feel, especially coming from the US, I don't know how it is in Japan, but from the US, there is such a push of like, especially right now in social media, maybe not societally as a whole, it depends on how old you are, what demographic you are, but like my dad's generation, I feel like Gen Z is pressured with it. Maybe not Gen X, maybe not millennials, but like my dad's Gen X, so maybe a little bit with that. But there's a pressure of you have to be this stereotypical subtype of masculinity, and like you have to be dominating and you have to be alpha male and like all of this. And that's what women want, or unfortunately some people are like that's what women need, and I'm like but I like Hirotaka being like, no, I'm not about that. That's not me. And that speaks volumes. Like if you are the type of guy that is your shtick and that's your MO, and you are like, I'm alpha male, lone wolf, big bear person, and that's your mentality, cool. That's great. Good for you. But if you're somebody that's also like, no, I'm not about that life, that's fine too. Like I know people, I know men that are heterosexual that are just not like dominating guys, and that's fine. Like that's doesn't have to be your shtick. Clearly it's working for Hirotaka because he's with Narumi. Clearly that's it. I do get kind of uncomfortable because especially at work, like if there are guys at work who are, if you see them and their spouse out, they're not the dominant one. I hear some rhetoric sometimes of being like, oh, he doesn't wear the pants in the family. That feels so outdated and wrong. And I'm like, what's wrong with her wearing the pants? What's wrong with that? Why can't they both wear pants? Why are pants signifiers of cultural status? What are we doing? So I really appreciate and admire Hirotaka in this moment for kind of setting a standard of, hey guys, you don't have to be alpha male eating only meat to like get a girlfriend and be happy in a relationship. You don't have to do that. You can also be compassionate and kind towards your partner. They'll appreciate it. It's okay. So I'm like, I love Hirotaka for what he does. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, am I being rejected? I like Kabakura basically saying like, what's wrong if I want to be the submissive? Wait, what did I say? Because I feel like Koyanagi kind of can be a little dominating sometimes. So, you know what? To each their own. I'm not kink shaming anybody. But I like that whenever Hirotaka looks over this time after the one girl left that was talking to Narumi, you can see that Narumi's just kind of like just, you know, kind of sad. And Hirotaka's like, no, I noticed something's wrong and I want to do something for her. And then she's like, oh, hey, no, I see you. Everything's fine. And he's like, So he waits for her after work. And he's like, I want to talk to you. And I love that Hirotaka, we're seeing more of him. Like, he is all about his games. He's a gamer. He's an otaku. But when he cares about someone and it frustrates him that he doesn't understand what's going on, he does take the time to sit down and be like, hey, I was waiting on you because I want to talk to you. Because I want to make sure it's fine. And I love this scene between them. He's like, let's go for a drink. And she's like, oh, no, it's okay. And he's like, I'll treat you. He's like, I like that he's kind of going through trying to figure out what the situation is. He's like, is it a money problem? I'll buy your drink if you want. It's not a big deal. And she's like, oh, no, that's not it. And she's like, I don't want to. And he's like, you know, we should have fun and forget about what's bothering you. If there's something going on. She's like, oh, well, I didn't want to make you worry. It has nothing to do with you. It's fine. And I like that he says, what do you mean it has nothing to do with me? We're dating. Like, if you're bothered, it does bother me. And if you're not telling me what's wrong, that makes me feel like I'm not reliable. And like, do you not trust me to be able to help? Like, he's like, I like that he's so open with his communication with her of what's going on. He's like, I know you well enough to know when you're faking a smile. And he's like, and I like that what he does here in this scene is like a textbook case of how you should, in my opinion, how you should handle a situation like this. Because he lets her know full on with communication. He's like, hey, it bothers me that you're not talking to me. It makes me feel like I'm unreliable to you. I really care about you and I want to know what's up and how I can help. I'm trying to help cheer you up. I need you to talk back to me and like, let me know what I can do. But I also like that he doesn't just talk down to her and make it seem like it's her fault for him being unhappy. He doesn't do that. Instead, he's like, hey, I admire that you're able to push through and let it like slide off of you and not let others know that you're bothered. He's like, and I love that he says that because a lot of times, you know, it's kind of framed as, oh, you're not communicating with me. This is a problem. But he's like, look, I wish I could be like you and brush off anything bothering me and act like it's okay. He's like, because I can't do that. He's like, so I admire that about you, but I also want you to at least tell me because I'm close to you and I want you to know that I'm here for you and I don't want to seem unreliable. And I love when he kind of pouts and he's like, aren't you going to tell me? And she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was making you sad. I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm not mad. And I like that little endearing look she gives him, like, okay, I see what you're doing there. That's really sweet. And she's like, okay, you're not going to laugh no matter what I say, right? Which once she says it, I don't blame him for chuckling at the bar being like, it's kind of funny. And she's like, ugh. I feel like her reaction in this episode would be exactly how I would be. She's like, no matter what. And I love how close he gets to that moment. Like, come on, tell me. And then we find out that her character got killed off from the series, which, you know what? That is fair. I have been super bummed when a character I really liked from a series died. I have been super bummed before, and it made me sad. Or my big thing, and I've talked to people on the channel about this, and it's really dumb, but I relate to Narumi in this moment. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it's a big deal to me. I do not like when people spoil to me, in general, but when people spoil to me when a series is ending. That seems so silly, and I know it seems stupid, but I have had on 3 different occasions someone being like, oh, hey, so that's manga's ending next month. Did you know that? Look, the Taurus in me is like, you gotta let me prep. You can't just sling a world-changing factoid like that on me and just sling it out there and not expect me to be like, what? So I have had on 3 occasions, 3 manga series that I was actively reacting to. Somebody's like, oh, that's ending next month, by the way. I'm like, you gotta let me prep to find this moment out. You gotta let me have a moment to digest all of this. I would rather find out on my own. Either I'd rather get to the end of the series and then be like, oh, that's it, and then talk about it. Or if I stumble across it online that's ending, I'll be like, oh, okay, but it will feel at least, it is a control thing. I'm aware of that. It feels like it's in my control that I know that information. I definitely feel that. But I'm like, when people just come out and say it, I'm like, could you not? Could you not? And I know it's not a big deal. In the grand scheme of the world, it's not a big deal. But in the moment, it's like, I feel like Narumi where I'm like, no, don't tell me. Let me find out. And respect to Kabakura for not spoiling it to her. Respect. Respect to Kabakura. He's like, as a manga fan. Okay. So this is super cute. I love like Hirotaka and Nefuji, Sunday mornings, time to sleep. I love that. And then you get to her and it's like Narumi Momose Sunday mornings realizes it's not a weekday. I love that. I love the Hirotaka is like, oh, I can sleep today because I've stayed up all night playing games. I can sleep in. And her being like, damn it, it's not a work day. I always have the opposite problems where especially when we have a holiday, like a few weeks ago, we had a holiday here in the US that was like midweek. It was on a Tuesday. So my school was closed on a Tuesday. And so I didn't have to be there. And then I woke up that morning thinking it was time to get ready for work. And I was like, no, I get to sleep in today. But then the worst happened the next day. I had to go back to work and I was like, I have to go back to the schedule. So I thought this was super cute. So the rest of this episode is talking about Christmas and what these couples do for Christmas, which is super cool. I will say, Kabakura, I have to get on to one of my students. When my students drinks like 3 or 4 monster drinks a day, and I'm like, you're in your early 20s, you don't think it's going to affect you right now, but that is going to lead you to have some AFib later when you're an older man, because men are more prone to AFib, and it's going to mess up your heart. You need to take care of yourself now. I feel like such a mom when I'm like, you need to watch yourself and not drink so many of these. And I went to tell Kabakura like 3 energy drinks in like one sitting. No. Stop that. I know I drink a lot of coffee, but I try to mitigate like by noon every day. I don't have coffee afternoon. I'll have decaf because I like the taste of coffee. I like the bitter acidicness of it. I love the taste of coffee. I know it's terrible for my teeth. I know the caffeine's like a lot for me, but afternoon I'm like, just have decaf. And then I can still have the coffee taste, but without like worrying about my heart exploding. So yeah. And so then Kabakura like tells him about all the extra things that he needs to get done. It's this time of year. You don't need to space out at work. I like that by the end of this episode, we kind of come to the conclusion that Kabakura, he's actually like he's working this hard for a reason. And even though it feels at the time like what he's doing, phrase this right, it feels at the time like what he's doing doesn't matter. He's actually working towards things like the dinner reservation that he made 6 months in advance. He is paying attention and he is doing nice gestures, but on the outside it can appear like he doesn't care. He kind of is like Hirotaka in that sense. Hirotaka seems more aloof at times when he's really observant and is actually paying attention. Kabakura at times feels like he's not focusing on his partner, but he actually is. He just is not as expressive with it like Hirotaka is, right? But he does care. And so Narumi asks about what, she's like, Narumi has a very real conundrum that I think a lot of people can relate to. And that's just, she's like, oh, they're coming out with this event this fall, this winter, but I can't afford it because I got to do this, this, and this. The holidays are real, especially if you have a lot of people to buy for. It can get really tight with money. And I feel like it's so consumerist around the holidays because there's gift expectations and all that it can get very hard to like pinch pennies and do things like that. So I get it. I do, because I have a lot of family to buy for, and I'm like, and then it can get a little tight around the holidays. But yeah, you're serious about it, Naru. And she's like, everybody's talking about dates and parties, and so I'm saving up money. And then Kiyonagi's like, this is the first Christmas you're dating somebody. Aren't you going on a date? I forget how Japan is a bit different with Christmas than the US is. It's more of like a romantic holiday than a religious holiday in Japan, which is super cute. I love that. And I like how Narumi is considering Hirotaka in this. She's like, well, he doesn't like crowds, so I don't know if he'd want to go out and do like anything like that. He's not the type to get excited about Christmas. And then she's like, how was your Christmas? And she's like, it was the worst. I love how she's like, it was terrible. She's like, you can see her being like, come on, Kabakura, what do you want to do? And he's like, I'm too busy for Christmas. At a time like this, we have work, the end of the year parties, New Year cards. Kabakura seems like somebody who gets easily worked up and easily stressed and easily like, and I relate to him so much in this episode because I get it. I feel like people either handle the holidays in one of three ways. They are either like Hirotaka and they're just kind of apathetic to it and they're like, it's what it is. It's not any different than any other day of the year. Like there's an apathy to it. Or there's the people that really enjoy the holidays. They're like, October 31st, they're like, get the Halloween stuff out, decorate for Christmas, singing all the carols, doing all the parties, doing all the things, and they're like exuberantly bouncing around with it. And then there are people that stress about the holidays and are like, we have to do all of this and there's no time and what are we doing? And I kind of bounce between Kiyonagi and Kabakura. I'm not apathetic like Hirotaka. I have friends that are apathetic. I'm not that. I am in between them. I'm like, on the one hand, it can be so overwhelming in the holidays and I'm trying not to make my brain turn off with all the things going on. But on the other end, I like the holidays. I love the festivities of it. I love hanging out with family and friends. I enjoy that. But I'm also an introvert at heart. And so I have to save up so much energy to be able to do those things. Like midway through a party, I'm like, whoop. Like the battery goes down. I'm like in a corner being like, is there a Game Boy? Is there something I can do? Or a book. I just kind of like deflate. He's like, there are tons of things we have to do as adults. That's what he said to me. We didn't do anything for Christmas and we didn't talk to each other until after New Year's. And Narumi's like, I'm not gonna poke the bear anymore. Which that sucks because, not talking to each other from Christmas, New Year's, that's a good solid week that they didn't talk. But the thing is, I think that Kabakura figured out that he goofed and he made up for it by getting some funds and getting this nice dinner planned in advance. So that's really nice. That's really nice. We're going to talk about that later. She's like, well, maybe Kabakura was busy work and didn't have any free time. She's like, who knows? But she's like, I put a lot of work into my costume last year and, I'll probably do the same this year. Which, at least she found something to do with it. So let's talk about this believing in Santa Claus thing, because I could relate a lot to this story. I was not as young as Hirotaka. I think my brother might have been, though. My brother and I are 5 years apart. I feel like I was around 10 or 11 when I stopped believing in Santa. So probably around the time of Narumi when she stopped believing. And my brother was probably, because he's 5 years younger, he was probably 5 or 6. So he's probably around Hirotaka's age. And the reason was because of a goof that my parents did. So I remember I also baby Hirotaka when he had glasses at 5. So cute. So cute with his little rolled up jeans. So cute. Precious. Finding the presents in the same spot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's super cute. My parents always did to be fair, they did an amazing job of being Santa because as a kid, we would always try to stay up as late as we could, but by 11 or midnight, we'd pass out. We couldn't stay up any later than that. We were just like clunk. And my parents would come in at like 1 or 2 in the morning and they'd always like stuff the stockings and put them they put the stockings on the couch because we didn't have a fireplace or anything. So they'd put stockings on the couch and they'd be stuffed with like candy and like little knickknacks. And then there'd be like one gift from Santa. Usually it was something my brother and I could split. We could share. Like we got a Sega one year and each of us got a game. So that was like our big Christmas present. But it was usually something we both could split, or it would be like fishing poles and we each had matched like different fishing poles. I'd had like a pink one, he'd have a blue one or something like that. But it was, they did a good job of surprising and hiding it. But one year they took Santa's gift to my grandparents. And our presents, because they were all things that were pretty easy to wrap, were like in the nice wrapping paper with the big pretty bows and it said from Santa. But they got us like this race car track. It was like a Hot Wheels race car track and it was all set up. But there was no good way to wrap it because it was just an awkward looking race car set. You couldn't really wrap it up in any way unless you put it in a box and made it work. And it just, so they put like some garbage bags over it and taped them up so it just like you couldn't tell what it was. And I remember being like 10 or 11 and I looked at that and went, Santa wouldn't use garbage bags. And then at that point I like afterwards went to my parents and I was like, that wasn't from Santa. That was from you or my grandparents, right? And they were like, yeah. And so that's when I knew and I was like, mm-hmm. But then like Hirotaka, it was one of those things where like, okay, now that you know, don't tell your brother until he's a little bit older because he was still into it. So I kind of felt like Hirotaka where I kept the secret until my brother was a little bit older and then he was like, it wasn't real, was it? I was like, no. But we were never mad at our parents for hiding it. We thought it was cool, and you're a kid. And our parents did a good job of explaining. They were like, we did it because, it was a celebration. It was something cute. And we were like, oh yeah, okay. It was fun. It was like a fun game. But yeah, also it's neat to see that now and Hirotaka had to share a bedroom when they were like 7 years apart, and sharing a bedroom that's a lot. So I feel for that. Also Hirotaka having the original Nintendo Game Boy, love it. Absolutely love it. My aunt's 8 years older than me, and she had one of the original Nintendo Game Boys, and she used to let me play it all the time. Love that. She's like, I had a lot of fun back then. And on the 25th, I would get presents and eat cake. And so you could tell that she's getting kind of like sad because Narumi's realizing that, she doesn't have the same magic that she did with things that she, did during celebrating Christmas as a kid. And Hirotaka's like, let's stop talking about this. It's getting kind of sad and depressing. But then they see now, and you can't be sad or depressed around now. It's not possible. He's such a sunshine bean. I love him. I feel for him because he is correct in that the Santa Claus outfit he's wearing looks really sheer and really thin. And so he probably is cold out there. Bless his heart. But yeah, I feel for Narumi too. I feel for Now too. Now wants a girlfriend and Narumi's like, hang in there. You should get one. You're really popular. Hirotaka says the most sibling thing possible. Where he's like, well, you're not giving main character vibes. That's all. I'm like, Hirotaka, be nice to your brother. Like, that's such a sibling thing. And I love that we get to see more of how Narumi was always kind of hanging out with the two of them. And Hirotaka, is the doting big brother, but he also is like teasing him like a big brother by like squishing his very squishable cheeks. Now is an adorable, precious angel baby. So cute. I don't blame him. It's cute. He's like, did I do that really? And Now's like, yes, I remember. I like that we get the idea of Now remembering things that Hirotaka did that Hirotaka doesn't even remember. He's like, well, you reminded me of Mario from Mario 64, which, valid. I see that. So yeah, poor Narumi. She's like, you've been struggling out in the cold while everybody walks by happily as a couple and you're just stuck out with your life. Like, it's the coffee thermos and he's getting snowed on. Amazing. And he's like, it's not that bad. To be fair, he could grab the cups of coffee and warm his hands up, but he needs some gloves, really, even if they're just like red finger gloves and not like the mittens. So yeah, you're like his stats are low. I love that now it's like, I don't get it. And Narumi's like, no, I get it. But hey, even side characters can get romance. Don't exclude it. And she's like, if you ever feel down, just remember what I'm about to say. I hope all the people out there, happy people out there, explode. He's like, my friend said the same thing. I don't get it. I love now. He's such a sweetheart. And Hirotaka's like, dang, Narumi's like got some deep-seated beliefs here. She's like, I do like the fact that the kid really likes now Santa get up, and he's like, look, if I'm helping to make people happy, it's fine. It's about the Santa Clauses we met along the way. It's about how we were Santa Claus. It is cute. Now is so precious and he's so fun. He'll find somebody. I'm pretty adamant about that. Heaven is in his imagination. So meanwhile, Kiyonagi is leaving work. She sees that Kabakura is still working on his stuff, and she's like, I guess I'll just go home. And he's like, oh no, we're not doing that. We're going out together for Christmas. I thought he was going to propose at this dinner scene. I thought that was going to happen. I thought he was going to propose because he took her out to this very fancy dinner and they had champagne and all this. She's like, are you trying to make up for last year? And he's like, yeah, kind of. That's part of it. And she's like, I see. So the reason you were working hard was for tonight. He's like, well, what's wrong with that? He's like, shut up, what's wrong with that? So yeah, he's been working hard to try to provide for moments like this, right? Which is very sentimental and sweet. She's like, when did you make the reservation? And he is blushing. He's like, half a year ago. Him blushing at 6 months ago is like, she's like, good job. I love that she's like, you did good. You did good. Kiyonagi seems like the person who would really, she likes gifts that are, I like that this scene and the scene we get in the after credits is very much showing their difference as couples of what they want. Narumi is more into the sentimental intimacy of just something warm and familial. She likes the idea of just, I want time spent together with someone and it feeling like this festive event. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. She's like, we just ate cake and opened presents. It wasn't anything big. Narumi is not materialistic in that sense. She's like, I just want the experience of Christmas and that feeling that you get, that nostalgia of it. Kiyonagi is a little bit more of a maintenance girl. She's like, I want to go out and get a nice fancy dinner, and I want, she wants that display of affection to have a price tag to it, right? Which is nothing wrong with that. Some people are like that. And then they tink glasses, and she's like, I haven't forgiven you completely for last year, but... And then she gives him this present. And when he opens it up, he's like, oh. And it's like the little limited edition event item. The girl with the meat club. She looks like Pebbles from the Flintstones. And he's like, how did you? And she's like, oh, well, Merry Christmas. She's like, I knew exactly what you wanted. I'm more observational than you think. I like Kabakura's like, oh, this is the gift that I wanted. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm a foodie. I love eating out. I love going to a nice restaurant. I like having good food. I'm more into the good food rather than nice restaurant. As long as the food is good, it's whatever. But I don't know. I'm more into an event date than a sit-down restaurant date. Because when you're at a sit-down restaurant, you can really only just talk back and forth and sit there and eat food, which is fine. I love that in a group setting. I could sit in a restaurant for hours with a group of people talking and eating. Great. But when it's just the two of you, I feel like, yeah, that part's good, but then I want to walk around and go see things and see what things look like and have that experience, right? But I'm also not opposed to, I like this episode was called Bleak Christmas, and it ends up being, the opposite. I freaking love what Narumi and Hirotaka do. Also, Narumi's swearing is a trip where she's like, I can't get it to drop a Kushala Dowrin gem. I love she's on the Switch saying it. And he's like, getting rare items is a game of numbers. And I love that they're just he's like, persistence is key, Narumi. I love that they opened up each other's gifts and they were the same game, which is super cute. They got each other the same game, and then they just had like some wine and beer and pizza, and that was their Christmas experience. I love that. It's not a cake, but it's like a Italian dinner cake. That pizza. It's super cute. I loved it. I thought that was super sweet. But yeah, and that's just like the perfect Christmas between them. I like also there is on the shelf two little cactuses. Like they're different size cactuses and they're different types of cactuses, but cacti rather. But they're both cacti, and it's like to me it represents how similar and different Narumi and Hirotaka are. I love it. I love it. It's so cute. But yeah, what a festive, fun episode. I thought this was so sweet. I loved it. This series is just doing such a good job of portraying relationships and making them very complex, making them very fresh and fun, but also very relatable. And I am 1,000 times here for it. So, yay. Anyway, I'm excited to hear your comments down below of what you thought of this episode and all of the relationship things that happened within it. So, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with episode 7 of Wotakoi Love is Hard for an Otaku. And I'll see you then.